千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we delve deeply into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Chapter 39. So here's the original text. Those that attained oneness since ancient times. The sky attained oneness and thus clarity. The earth attained oneness and thus tranquility. The gods attained oneness and thus divinity. The valley attained oneness and thus abundance. The myriad things attained oneness and thus life. The rulers attained oneness and became the world's standard. These all emerged from oneness. The sky, lacking clarity, will break apart. The earth, lacking tranquility, would erupt. The gods, lacking divinity, would vanish. The valley, lacking abundance, would wither. Myriad things, lacking life, will be extinct. The rulers, lacking standard, will be toppled. Therefore, the honored uses the lowly as basis. The higher uses the lower as foundation. Thus, the rulers call themselves alone, bereft, and unworthy. Is this not using the lowly as basis? Is it not so? Therefore, the ultimate honor is no honor. Do not wish to be shiny like jade, be dull like rocks. So it's a fairly long chapter, although not quite as long as the previous one, chapter 38. When we did the sectional analysis, we were able to divide it into 3 parts, 3 sections. Here's what they look like. Along with all the repeating characters that gave us the hints on how to divide them up. And you can see quite clearly from line 9 all the way down to line 14, a whole bunch of repeating characters there for sure. From 1 to 8, definitely from 1 to 7, many repeating characters, and then line 8 is the concluding line for that section. And then the rest of it from 15 down to 21, those lines become the concluding or the summary section, the 3rd section. So previously, we were able to get to line 2. That's the only 2 lines that we covered, but we did talk about how to apply the general idea to understand all 7 lines, all first 7 lines, and the same approach we will take once again when we go into section 2. So previously, we talked about this central idea, 得一. This is attaining oneness. The master key, as we talked about last time, was that everything that you see here, from line 2 to line 7, refer to different aspects of existence. And the key is that all of these aspects are mirrored in you. These are all talking about aspects of you. This works because you are a microcosm of the universe. That which is the case, that which is true macrocosmically is also true microcosmically, because you are a reflection of reality at the earthbound personal level, at the level where you and I interact. So literally, the universe is in you. You are a universe unto yourself. So more about that in just a moment. continuing with the recap. So last time, we were able to get to line 2. So we talked about how when the sky attained oneness, meaning beautifully clear skies. So looking at that, the ancients would say, look, the heaven attained oneness. That is why it's so clear. So when you apply that to the level of you, the human level, it just means that when you have the oneness of the Tao in the mind, you have clarity of thoughts and perception, just like the beautifully clear skies. You can see farther, everything is clearly visible. That means everything is easy to see and easy to understand. So we use that same technique throughout the first section to understand them line by line. So here's how we utilize the same idea into the next line. So line 3 says the earth attained oneness and thus tranquility. Let's take a look at that. So when the environment is peaceful and tranquil, the ancients will point to it as a sign of oneness. So when it comes to the earth, the environment, the surroundings, this is more true than not, because after all, things like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are rare events. So most of the time, the environment, solid ground, is stable, peaceful, and tranquil. How do we apply that to human beings? Well, we know one thing about human beings, and that is we have usually a shortage of tranquility. So we are not quite as peaceful and serene as the ground, as the environment out in nature. So let's see how it is reflected. When we talk about the human level, this is all about the foundation of your life. So I will characterize this as your heart. So do you have tranquility in your heart? That is the question. You can further extend that on the basis of foundation and talk about home, because home is where the heart is. We say that all the time. It's literally true. And when you have the oneness of the Tao in your home, there's stability and peace of mind. You can rest easily. Your home is your castle of tranquility to shield you from a chaotic world. So directly and indirectly, it provides you with tranquility in your heart as well. And you can also flip that around, and you can assert that when you have tranquility in your heart, you are able to create a tranquil environment in your home. So most of the time, hopefully, just like the environment out in nature, there's, generally speaking, tranquility and peace and stability in your home, which will contribute to the tranquility and stability in your heart. Hope that's clear. I think easy to understand when you look at it that way. So let's use the same technique and extend it further into the next line. The next line, as you can see, is talking about the gods now. So what do the gods have to do with it, and who are the gods? So this is not a description of a pantheon of gods in the Tao. There isn't a pantheon of gods in the original Tao philosophy. That gets added later on when people want to practice religion with Tao as the basis. They then absorb all kinds of local deities into the Tao pantheon of gods. Here, it is just talking about the gods in general. So gods from ancient times, gods that have been around for thousands of years in Chinese history by the time that Lao Tzu came around 2,500 years ago. So what about those gods? Well, when those gods attained oneness, thus divinity, what does that mean? So remember, from the Tao perspective, the gods represent divinity and therefore spirituality. So there's a little bit more to that, which we'll get into later on. The gods also represent avatars and paragons of human virtues, human characteristics. We'll get to that later. So when you have the oneness of the Tao in your spiritual practice, this is applying this line to the personal level now. When you have that oneness, you're able to manifest divine wisdom and authentic power. Here, when I talk about authentic power, I'm talking about internal spiritual power. That is the most authentic kind. So then, what if you don't have that authenticity? What if you don't have that oneness? Well, you can imagine that you wouldn't have the same divine wisdom, the same spirituality that you otherwise would. Now, do we see that very often? Well, the answer, I'm afraid, is yes. We do see that. A lack of oneness, in this case, will be someone who is only going through the motions. So this is the person who shows up, at church or perhaps at the temple, practicing the rituals while dwelling on distracting thoughts. I think you have probably seen this and maybe also experienced it, that you're not really focusing on the rituals when you're at a place of worship. Instead, your mind is all over the place. You're thinking about work, you're thinking about school, you're thinking about your friends, people you know, gossip, socializing, all that distracting, confounding thoughts running around in your mind. Anything but the ritual at hand. So when you are not able to focus, when you are not able to concentrate on spirituality, there's not going to be any power, any wisdom that you can derive from that. So that's what this is talking about. So we will be repeating this a few times later on when we summarize, and I'll talk about deities and gods, the difference between that divine power and mythological figures. So let's move on for now. Stick with the overview of the first section. So now we're talking about the valley. The valley attained oneness and thus abundance. So what does that mean? Now, the abundance of the valley represents abundant prosperity in your life. What that means is that when you have the oneness of the Tao in your valley, quote unquote, you're able to manifest wealth. To have wealth, abundance, and prosperity in your life, it means that you have freedom from worrying about not having enough, shortage, resource shortage, insufficiency. So here, I want to be very clear that when I'm talking about wealth, I'm not really just talking about money. Wealth in this context is about many different aspects of life. This wealth can be in terms of relationships, connections, goodwill, not at all limited to material things. So I want to make sure that's clear. In the Tao, general terms apply generally. So wealth, represented by the valley, can be a wealth in, for instance, emotional connections. So we're on a pretty good track right now. We're able to decipher everything so far from line 2 down to line 5. So what about 6 and 7? These are a little bit different, but the same technique applies. Line 6, the myriad things attained oneness, and thus life. What is that about, and how is that different from the valley? So let's talk about the myriad things. Here, the myriad things are the myriad living things, the living creatures. They represent nature in you at the personal level, this represents the force, the energy of life, which manifests as vitality, as health, as life force. So that means when you have the oneness of the Tao in this regard, you live with zest. Like life is full of interesting, fun things. You enjoy excellent health. That means you're able to work hard and have plenty of energy left to play hard. So what about when you don't have this? What if you don't have this oneness that provides you with life? A lack of oneness in this case would manifest as low energy, little or no interest in everything life has to offer. So kind of just a lot of apathy, a lot of inertia, not wanting to do anything, and a disconnection from nature itself. There's going to be more elaboration on this in the section, in the second section, which is the next section. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. So what about the next line? The next line is about the rulers attained oneness and became the world standard. So what does that mean? So first of all, rulers would map to leadership roles in your life. So this just says that the rulers represent leadership. When you have oneness of the Tao in this regard, it just means you live an exemplary life. And because of that, you have the honor of serving as an example. That's what standard, the world standard means. You are an example for others to follow. So I want to be very clear that this is not about like a managerial role. This is not about leading people in the workplace. It covers that for sure, but it's about all interactions with people. That includes interactions at work, among friends, in your home, with your family, acquaintances, etc. Regardless of the specific interaction, regardless of the people that you deal with, when you have the oneness of the Tao, everybody that you come into contact with will naturally fall into alignment with you. That's the magic of oneness. And I also want to make it very clear, like, who determines that you will be a good example? Well, it's actually not you who gets to make that call. In the Tao, the determination is made by other people, not the person who thinks of himself as a great example, because chances are pretty good that this opinion, i.e., everybody look at me, I'm a great example for you to follow, that opinion may come from a delusional ego. And we see that quite a bit too, don't we? So now, let's go to line 8, which is the concluding line for this particular section. And then we're going to have to do quite a bit of work to summarize everything, to bring everything into sharper focus. The next line says, these all emerge from oneness. So I would like to talk about what that means. First of all, as already noted, this line summarizes everything from line 2 to line 7. Line 1 is the intro line for this section, section 1. Line 8 is the concluding line. So all the good things described, i.e., clarity, tranquility, divinity, abundance, etc., these are all positive traits in nature. These are all benefits in one's life, your life. These are all possible through oneness. These are unavoidable when you have oneness. These are natural side effects. These flow automatically when you have oneness. Okay. Now, I want to sound a note of caution here because as cultivators of the Tao, we should all be naturally skeptical. We should regard everything, we should take on everything with a grain of salt. So oneness seems like it's so good for every aspect of life, whether it's the mind, the heart, prosperity, everything. So it seems like a cure-all. And what I mean by cure-all is like a magical solution to any problem, you know, what we might call the silver bullet, right? And it's something that probably will pique everyone's curiosity. So what will happen if you don't have this oneness? And what exactly is oneness? So there's a little bit more to say about that, and I want to make sure we cover that. All of these questions we will tackle one at a time. I want to first take a look at this from a different angle, because if it is not clear to see how oneness leads to the positive characteristics, we can flip it around to see how they can help us attain oneness. Let me explain that a little bit. So we can see what it's trying to tell us. Let's take line 2 as an example. When there's oneness in the mind, then we can have clarity of thoughts and perception. Okay, that makes sense. Then the question becomes, how do we do that? How do we attain oneness? Now, it's okay for us to flip it around. And then, because these things feed into one another, we can say, how would clarity of perception and thought lead us into attaining oneness? This is how you reverse that for easier understanding. And it's the same with line 3. The earth attained oneness and thus tranquility. We talked about the earth representing the heart, the home, the basis for our tranquility. So how exactly does that work? Well, we can also understand it better by looking at it the other way. How can we utilize tranquility, serenity, quietness, silence to help us attain oneness, the benefits of oneness? So that's easier to understand. And in fact, there is a story that can help us illustrate this concept. So this is a story that I call The Farmer's Watch. It's a story that I like to tell, especially when it comes to oneness, especially when it comes to attaining oneness through tranquility, silence, quietness, etc. And the story goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a farmer. Now, this particular farmer had a most prized possession, which you can see in this slide. That possession was his gold pocket watch, just like that. So he took a lot of pride in always knowing what time it was. So this is decades ago that this story took place. This was back in the days when people regarded something like a timepiece as a rarity. So he took a lot of pride in that. Whenever he wanted to know what time it was, he would pull out the gold watch from his pocket, flip it open with a flourish. It was a smooth motion for him. Pull it out, flip it open, to check the time. So as I said, relatively unusual back in the days when people didn't have much, especially in his rural community. People usually, they woke up at the break of dawn. They worked out in the fields when there was daylight, during the day. And when it got dark, they would retire for the day. They would rest. So they were used to the rhythm of the day and night transition. They would keep track of time in that sense. Is it daytime? Is it nighttime? They weren't that concerned about precisely what time it was, but if they needed to know, they could always rely on this particular farmer. The other thing about this farmer was he had a very large cellar. That was where he stored his agricultural products and tools. Now, many things get moved in and out of the cellar, of the storage units in the cellar, so that it always got very messy and very disorganized quickly. So it was customary for the farmer that every single year he would gather a whole bunch of farm hands. He will hire these people to come in and help him clean things out and organize the cellars annually, once a year. So our story opens when the time came once again for the annual cleaning. So the day came and the farmer got up in the morning. He did his morning chores. Then he decided to start the process of cleaning, of doing that annual cleaning of the cellar. So what he wanted to do first was that he wanted to take a look at the cellar. He wanted to survey the situation to come up with a rough idea, a rough plan on how to go about it. So once he had this rough plan in his mind, he would go back up the stairs, he would summon all the workers, all the farm hands, and he would organize them. He would get them to start working. So he went down to the cellar with a lamp, looked around, made up that plan in his mind, and then he walked back up the stairs to get the workers. Now, at the top of the stairs, a thought occurred to him. He was thinking, it's a good idea for me to check what time it is right now. That way, when the workers are done, I can check the time again. This will tell me how many hours it took this year to organize my cellar. So, as is usual for him, he took out the pocket watch with a flourish, flipped it open to check the time. But in that smooth motion that he was so accustomed to, this time at the top of the stairs it slipped. The watch slipped out of his hand. It so happened that this time the chain that affixed the gold watch to him was not fastened. It just so happened that it wasn't fastened that day, so the gold watch slipped away from him. The pocket watch slipped away and fell into the darkness of the cellar. It bounced its way down the stairs. It made a bunch of noise. It knocked against this thing and that, and the farmer was like, "Oh, my precious gold watch," getting damaged, getting bumped up, and then it disappeared. And the farmer could not see clearly which way it bounced to, this direction or that direction. Where did it go? So he was really in a panic because it was dark down there, and this was his most valuable possession. So he went down right away with the lamp. He took it down to the cellar. He looked around. He looked everywhere around the stairs, everywhere around that, all the nooks and crannies, and it was hopeless. There were so many things down there, were so messy, so disorganized, he could not see where the gold pocket watch went. So after a while, he decided to go back up for help. it was too much for him. He could not reasonably conduct a search by himself. So he got all the farmhands together. They were supposed to help him organize the cellar, and now he had another task for them. Before they even start to clean things out, he said, okay, everyone, there's a nice bonus in it for you if you can help me find my gold pocket watch. So upon hearing this, everybody is amply motivated. As a group, they all went down to the cellar. They all carried their own lamps. So the cellar was very well illuminated. And they looked around. They examined different stacks. They looked into every corner they could, but everything was so piled up and so disorganized, none of them could see the gold pocket watch anywhere. No one had any luck finding it. This went on for a good hour and a half. So everybody, by this time was tired and they were all getting hungry because it was close to lunchtime. The farmer himself was pretty anxious too. He kept cursing his bad luck. He kept complaining and looking. But he too was hungry, so it was time to take a break. So he got everybody back out of the cellar to ground level, and everyone took a break together. Everyone had lunch together. And what he told them was that, okay, everybody, immediately right after lunch, we have to resume the search. I don't care how long it takes. I have to find that gold pocket watch. It is my most valuable possession. So time passed, everybody got done with lunch, they hurried through it, and everybody was ready to head back down to the cellar. When they descended again, a surprising sight greeted them. In the cellar, there was a young boy from the neighborhood. The young boy was dangling the gold pocket watch in his hand. He found the gold pocket watch and he handed it over to the farmer. So by now, the farmer was completely amazed. He's like, whoa, hold on, wait a minute. All of us were looking for this. We turned the place upside down. We didn't find it. How did you do it? Now, he also knew that when he lost the pocket watch, the little boy wasn't around. So there was no way the little boy could have seen which way the pocket watch fell down the stairs. So how could he find the pocket watch so easily while all of them had failed for like an hour and a half? The young boy said, well, sir, it was actually quite easy. After you guys left for lunch, I came down here. I sat around. It got really quiet, and I got really quiet too. I quieted down enough so I could hear the tick-tock sound made by the gold pocket watch. So I followed the sound, tick-tock, until I located the pocket watch. I found the place where it had fallen to on the ground. It was easy. So that is the story of the farmer's watch. Let me pause for a moment and ask everyone to reflect on the meaning of the story and tie it back to the section of the Tao Te Ching 39 that we have just looked at. So we saw this table, attaining oneness. And, my question is, how would that map into this particular story? And how we can use that to help us attain oneness ourselves. So I have a few observations that I would like to share with everyone. And you guys are absolutely correct. The boy possessed tranquility and clarity. They helped him attain oneness, which allowed him to easily locate the gold pocket watch. So the idea is that when you want to hear, you should silence the mind so you can hear more easily. Now, let's also talk about what one should not do. We can see the opposite in the farmer. Note that the farmer was anxious. The situation when he organized all the farmhands to look for the pocket gold watch together, it was noisy, it was chaotic, it was frantic because everyone was frantically searching, turning the place upside down. This is rarely the best way to do anything, never mind attaining oneness. So what we can get from the story is that negative emotions and noise can keep you from the oneness of the Tao. And you end up with a lack of clarity and a lack of insights. I think everyone can see that, right? So let's review what the boy did that was congruent with the Tao. So the boy went in the opposite direction. I don't mean literally going in the opposite direction. I mean, he approached the situation very differently from the farmer. He quieted down, he slowed things down, he got quiet himself so he could listen. What can we extract from that? Well, the wisdom is tranquility and calmness will take you back to the oneness of the Tao. Everything becomes clearer, and you end up accomplishing your objective easily and almost without effort. So this is why the little boy said it was easy. It didn't take a lot of effort. It didn't take a lot of time. So those are the important messages from the story. And now to wrap up this section, what we'll do is that we'll take a look at a couple of summary slides that'll put everything together in one slide to kind of further reinforce the concept. So here I have a slide where I want to talk about the original, which is going to be the left-hand column. This is where Lao Tzu writes about oneness in different attributes of the world. Then I want to map each attribute to something in you. And then I want to talk about the effect that oneness has. So to start with, there's the world. Then I want to use this to represent you. The Vitruvius Man by Da Vinci. This is just a depiction of it. Then I want to use yin and yang to represent the Tao. Okay, so this is the setup. Now, the first thing that we talked about in the Tao Te Ching was heaven. Remember, when heaven attained oneness, thus clarity. Heaven maps to the state of your mind, the mental aspects of you. So when heaven attained oneness, there's clarity. When your mind attains oneness, you attain clarity as well. You can see farther, you can see more clearly. That's what it means. Then we've got earth. This maps to the heart. And remember, I also talked about home, because home is where the heart is. It's your base, your foundation. So for both earth and heart/home, you need tranquility. Tranquility for the earth means stability, unchanging, serene stability. Tranquility for you, same thing. For your heart, for your home, you've got to have tranquility there too. So more on this later. The next thing that we talked about was gods. This maps to spirituality in you. So the gods attained oneness and therefore divinity. Your spirituality, if you possess the oneness of the Tao, will also allow you to manifest the wisdom of divinity for yourself, the authentic spiritual power. Then we talked about the valley. The valley is an often used metaphor in the Tao. It represents prosperity, it represents wealth. When the valley had oneness, it was able to manifest abundance. When you have oneness in your life, you enjoy wealth in multiple aspects of your life, not just the material. Then, after valley, we spoke of the myriad things. And here, I'm notating living things to make it clearer. The life force, the energy of life that allows living things to thrive, that maps to physicality, which means if the living things had oneness, they would have life. They would be able to thrive. If you have oneness for your physical body, you would enjoy health. You would enjoy higher level of energy. And as I said, you will be able to work hard and play hard. Then, lastly, we have the rulers. So remember, in your life, this represents leadership, not just managerial leadership, type of leadership in the workplace, but leadership in the home, among friends, in the community, everywhere. Everywhere you have interactions with other people. It's all about setting an example for others, or you can think of it as winning the respect that people have. So this is the summary, and what I've also done, I want to present yet another slide to you, which is the same content presented in a different way, but a summary slide that includes the Chinese characters themselves. So once again, we have the world, we have you, and we have the Tao, which is the balance. And we have this table. So the world, you, and oneness. So remember the attributes for the mind: clarity of thoughts and perception. The attributes for the heart: tranquility, serenity, peace, stability in not only the heart, but also the home. For divinity, the attribute is about wisdom and authentic spiritual power. Abundance is about prosperity in all of your ventures. Health is about zest for living. Excellent health and fitness. Plenty of energy. And lastly, example, that means you have the honor to serve others by leading and guiding them. So this is it. These are the benefits of attaining oneness as they apply to the world and as they apply to you. Section 2 is about lacking the attributes. What happens when the lacking occurs, what is the consequence? And remember, we want to use the exact same approach as before to decipher this section. What that means is that for everything that we're looking at here, the sky, the earth, the gods, the valley, we want to map all of them to the human experience, to your life, to what's happening here and now. So let's start with the first one about the sky. Line 9 says the sky lacking clarity would break apart. So we can pretty much guess what it means because we have the master key of understanding section 1 and section 2. So think about it this way. The opposite of clear skies is dark clouds. So what happens when dark clouds gather overhead? Well, we know that it's likely that there's going to be bad weather. It's going to rain. Maybe there's going to be a storm, right? It's likely that those may follow. So when it does rain, when there's a downpour, it is as if the sky breaks apart when the rain is coming down hard. So there you go, the break apart. So that's what happens to the sky. What happens to the mind when you are lacking clarity? For the individual, for you and me, the lack of mental clarity can certainly be described as dark clouds and bad weather in the mind, in the mental state. Unclear thoughts lead to poor choices and decisions. I definitely know the times in my life, in my own life, when that's occurred, and probably you have some examples you can think of right now about unclear thoughts leading to poor choices, poor decisions. And of course, they lead to negative results in life. So those results, I'm too embarrassed about my own poor results to really talk about them. I'm gonna trust that you know exactly what I mean. Let's move on. So let's take a look at this line. The earth, lacking tranquility, would erupt. So eruption in this case is an excellent metaphor for someone flying off the handle, hitting the ceiling, etc. So let's bring it back to the level of the world. The ancients recognized that the earth was still unstable most of the time, but they also knew about earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. So even though those were rare events, when they did occur, they were pretty traumatic because they were so unusual. So here, Lao Tzu describes eruptions, earthquakes as the lack of tranquility when oneness is not attained. So what about for you? What about for you living your life? For the individual, the lack of tranquility can manifest as eruptions of anger. So the lack of stability or stable base can manifest as domestic discord. So eruptions of anger in the heart, that's one aspect of it. This can potentially occur in all different aspects of life, when you're out and about with other people, but it can also occur in the home. So when it does occur in the home, this is another aspect of it. We talked about the earth representing the heart, but also the home, because home is where the heart is. So the lack of stability in the home can be tension, strife, even violence in the home. And that is definitely something that we have seen or heard about or read about. So that can happen. So what about line 11? The gods lacking divinity would vanish. Let's talk about that, both from the perspective of the gods and from the personal practice of spirituality. First, the gods. So here, I want to emphasize that the gods represent avatars or paragons of human attributes and virtues. They require the power of divinity. Without divinity, the gods cannot continue as deities. They become mythology or fade from the memory of human worshippers. This applies to all religions. Any religion, and in the course of human history, there have been countless religions that have come and gone. They came for a while, the deities were worshipped. After a while, they depart and become mythology. So today we have colorful tales from Norse mythology, Greek mythology, etc., that we can enjoy. We forget that once upon a time, people took them pretty seriously. So that's the sequence. But let's talk about the important thing. Let's talk about how this maps to humanity, how this maps to you and me living our lives. For the individual, lack of divinity, and here at the personal level, this will be belief, faith, commitment. The lack of divinity in spiritual practice means one cannot manifest the authentic power of spirituality. So not only are we talking about inner spiritual power, but we're also talking about the wisdom that spirituality can bring. So when that happens, the Tao seems to vanish from one's life, leaving only a feeling of emptiness. Let me elaborate on that a little bit. Let me talk about lacking divinity. This is, in fact, much more widespread than even the slide is talking about. So let me further discuss this particular concept. So I know that in Asia, when you go to temples, you will see people offering incense, praying to the gods. What are they doing? Well, they are requesting protection. They're asking for special favors. They're asking for assistance. They may be praying to the Buddha. Buddha, can you please help me with XYZ, with a particular thing? Now, from experience, I know that most people, most of the time, don't really give a lot of thought to spiritual pursuits, spiritual practice. It is only when things take a negative turn in life, then suddenly they find themselves in desperate need to pray, to ask for assistance. This means a lack of long-term commitment, lack of understanding. If you think about it, when we talk about deities representing human virtues, human avatars and paragons, one example is the Guanyin Bodhisattva. That is an avatar and paragon of human compassion and mercy. It is the same with the Maitreya Buddha. It is the paragon of generosity and tolerance. They're there to remind you and me to put that into daily practice, that as we live our lives from day to day, we should be practicing compassion, mercy, generosity, tolerance, etc. But people use them not as reminders to learn from, but as targets of requests. I really need help with so-and-so, right? So please grant me my wish. Now, I don't want to single out people in Asia and Asian temples, because this is in fact human nature, and it occurs throughout the entire world. So here in the West, it is exactly the same thing. People pray to God, asking for many things. It's no different. When in reality, just like people should be learning from the Bodhisattva on compassion, helping others, here they should be more keeping thoughts on the teachings of universal love rather than, oh, please God, I'm in a serious fix. Can you give me some help? I really need your help right now. Please, please, please. That is actually a lack of divinity in the context of belief, faith, and commitment. Maybe at the moments of the prayer, out of desperation, oh, I really believe you can help. Wow. That isn't true faith or belief. That is desperation talking. So it's quite widespread what we're talking about here. And we want to watch that we manifest the same kind of behavior ourselves. As Tao cultivators, we should all aspire to rising above this level. Let's go to the next one. The valley lacking abundance would wither. So the valley, this is a nice visual that we can zoom in on. If you can visualize the valley that used to be fertile and rich, that lacking oneness, lacking that richness, it would decline without the abundance that oneness brings. So the often used metaphor of the valley is that there will be a river that flows through the center of the valley. That river or stream would dry up. So the lush greenness that was characteristic of the valley before, it turns brown and yellow because everything is drying up. So what about for the individual? How does that apply to life? How does that apply to you and me? Well, the lack of abundance means deterioration in multiple areas of life. We talked about this standing in for abundance and prosperity. So this is the opposite, deterioration in terms of material prosperity. But not only that, but also your wealth is social connections, relationships, creative pursuits, everything. Sufficiency turns to deficiency, surplus turns into scarcity. So that's what can happen when you are lacking oneness, lacking abundance in that particular aspect of your existence. Now let's take a look at the myriad things, which, as I noted before, is referencing the myriad living things. Myriad things lacking life will be extinct. So it is the same with all the living things out there. Without the energy of life that the oneness of the Tao brings, they begin to weaken and dwindle in number. Ultimately, this leads to extinction. So the question, again, using the same approach that we used before, is to ask, how does this apply to my life? How does this apply to the individual, human, personal level? So for the individual, the lack of life can manifest in a couple of different ways. So in everyday living, decreasing energy and interest to do anything, like I just don't feel like, doing that, whatever that is. No, that's okay. You guys go ahead. I'm just gonna stay here sitting on my couch. That's one aspect of it. Lack of interest, lack of the energy of get up and go. For the body, for the physical body, we're talking about health now. This is about declining health that eventually leads to death. When it's talking about going extinct, extinction at the personal level means death. As you can see, the consequences are pretty serious, whether we're talking about a lack of energy or declining health. Pretty serious. So then I think we're ready to tackle the last line. Line 14 says the rulers lacking standard will be toppled. So you can, I think, pretty much guess where this is going. So in ancient times, the rulers would be nobility and royalty. In the modern world, rulers can be taken as head of a household, family. As you interact with friends, you may take the lead on certain things. But let's stick with ancient times for now. If the rulers are lacking in the Tao, they lose the respect of the people, the ability to inspire them, the ability to lead by example. And this would eventually result in them being toppled, or the loss of their authority would be another way to say it. Okay, now, what about the personal level? I think you can guess. For the individual, the lack of oneness in this regard means others no longer look to you for guidance or advice. And again, this applies to the workplace, at home, and with friends. No matter who it is you interact with, you get to a situation where whatever opinions or suggestions you had in mind to express, they just fall on deaf ears. This means you lose credibility with them, you lose status in the group, so the authority you had before is no longer accepted. So in other words, there's a rejection of the authority that you may want to impose. So having said all this, we've covered lines 9 to 14. We can now also compose a slide that summarizes everything together. It's going to look similar to the slide that you have seen, the one that builds up and the one that's in table format along with the Chinese characters. So let's do that. Let's take a look at that. So this slide is mostly similar to what you had seen before. Well, we have the different aspects of the world. This is what Lao Tzu wrote about, and we're symbolizing using the globe. This is the world. It's got the atmosphere, which is heaven. It's got the ground level, which is the stability part. Living on it, all the human beings, worshiping the gods, living in valleys, all the living things, all the rulers over them. We map that to the U level, the personal level. So that's all about your mind, your heart, whether or not there's stability and tranquility there. Spirituality, do you have divinity? Do you have faith? Do you have belief? About wealth, different aspects of wealth, not just material. Physicality, energy, health, fitness, all that. And leadership, that's about you and your interactions with other people. So let's see what happens when there's loss of oneness, loss leading to the lack of benefits that we saw in section 1. So when heaven lacks clarity, the consequence is that it breaks apart. So rain and storm is what we used, but more relevant is the fact that when your mind is scattered and fragmented, you've got chaotic thoughts. You are not able to think in the same coherent manner. And then there's heart, representing stability of the earth. What about stability in the heart? Well, the consequence of not having the tranquility is the eruption and anger, the rage that you can get into. Then we talked about how when the gods lacked the divinity brought about by oneness, then the consequence is that they will vanish. When you lack the same divinity brought about by oneness, then your own spiritual nature can seem to vanish. You can feel empty and lost. So same idea, but applied to the personal level. Then we get to the valley once again. So the abundance and prosperity now become lacking. It becomes, the valley is withering. The valley has become withered. And same applies to the different aspects of wealth in your life. They too will begin to wither. Next, we have the living things representing physicality, your physical, biological body, and living things lacking the life brought about by oneness will become extinct. You, without oneness, will have declining health, which can lead to death, and that's the personal extinction. Lastly, rulers without the example, the ability to set standard brought about by oneness, they will be rejected. Toppled is the term that Lao Tzu used. When you are not able to demonstrate your own standards and living by example, you too will no longer be respected. You too will not be looked upon for suggestions and advice. No one will decide to follow your example. Your authority is likewise rejected. So these are the consequences. They are the opposite of the previous slide that we looked at. And I think these are all pretty easy to understand once we have the master key to decipher everything. So we just have to do one more thing. We just have to bring in the world again and you again and the table with the Mandarin characters. So here we are. As I mentioned, your thinking becomes fragmented and chaotic. That's the first row here, break apart. You're given to fits of anger and rage. That's the second row here. You feel lost without your spiritual practice. That's the vanish and empty. You're mired in scarcity and debt. That's the wither part. Your wealth is withering. You suffer from serious health issues. That is the living things, physicality mapping, going extinct. And then lastly, with the leadership part, you lose credibility in the eyes of others. Why should they believe you when you don't even have all of your ducks in a row? You don't have it all together. Why should they listen to you? That is the situation when you lose the oneness of the Tao. Okay, wow. So here's what we have done so far. We have talked about the benefits that oneness will bring in different aspects of your life. Now, looking at this slide, we also see all the negative consequences when you're lacking that, when you don't have the benefits that oneness brings. So let's put the two together in the next slide. This will clarify everything. So first of all, the benefits of attaining oneness, and all I'm doing here is that I'm writing the same thing except presenting it in a slightly different way. All the benefits that you've already seen several times now, the clarity, tranquility, divinity, and by divinity, I mean spiritual power at the personal level, abundance, meaning prosperity, life as in health, energy level, standard, setting an example. So these are the benefits of attaining oneness. Then we just looked at the consequence of lacking the above. Break apart, that's the fragmented and scattered thoughts, chaotic thoughts, eruption in anger and rage, the vanishing faith, the feeling of emptiness and being lost, the withering wealth, the extinction as applied to life and health, and toppled as in rejected by your peers, rejected by family in looking to you to provide guidance, mentoring, leading. So let's take a look at these two together. Here's my question. First of all, we look at the benefits that oneness brings and the consequence of not having them. I think you would agree with me that oneness is extremely important. Okay, so key question, what exactly is oneness? If it is so important, should we not gain more clarity, better understanding of it? Well, it's kind of abstract. So can we attempt to articulate what oneness truly is? Well, we have to. We're here to delve deeply into the Tao Te Ching, so it's our duty to come to a better understanding of the oneness that we're talking about here. We've seen the effects. We've seen the positive effects of having it. We've seen the negative effects of lacking it. So now we got to know, we got to get a better idea. What does it mean? What does it stand for? We got to be super clear. So here's the slide on that. What is the oneness of the Tao? Let me just tell everybody that this goes on for quite a bit because it's a truly multi-dimensional topic, multifaceted. In order to understand the oneness of the Tao, you have to look at it from several different angles. But don't worry, I will take you through the different angles one by one. By the end of it, I can guarantee you will have crystal clarity. So like the Tao itself, oneness is a characteristic that can be attained at different levels. And I mean different levels of reality, different levels of existence. So this is kind of a heavy-duty discussion here. Let's start with the biggest level of all, what I call the most macrocosmic level. At the most macrocosmic level, oneness refers to the totality of the universe itself. Yeah, that oneness, like everything oneness, everything totality. And I want to focus a little bit on the word universe. It's an interesting word. We use it all the time. The word universe has the same prefix, the UNI prefix, as unify, unity, uniform, union, united. It goes on. If you break out a dictionary, you're going to see a lot more. I'm listing just the most common ones. Unit means one. So think about it. Universe literally means one verse or one song. Now, I know that among the people who are tuning in, we have quite a few who enjoy the occasional reading into science and physics. So once in a while, I get a question like, universe, cool. What about the multiverse? So if you look at this right here, universe literally means one verse or one song. Well, in that context, the multiverse could be different verses of the overall song or different songs in a collection of songs. Take your pick. The analogy works either way. Okay, so now let's extend a little bit on the universe. So as you can see, oneness refers to the totality of the universe itself. Everything, you, me, everything we're using now to communicate with one another, everything we can see all around us, everything is an inseparable part of this overall totality, just like a drop of water is part of the ocean. So we know for a fact that we can understand more about the ocean by learning about the water. It is the same with the universe, and what I mean by that is to get to a better understanding of the totality that is the oneness of the Tao, we can study at the personal level to understand the universal level. So just like water to the ocean, think of you yourself as a drop of water and the universe itself as a vast cosmic ocean. That's what I'm getting at. So by understanding the Tao, by understanding the universe better, we understand the individual better, and vice versa. So this is one level of understanding of oneness. There's more. Like I said, we have to look at this at multiple angles. Here's a different angle. Oneness refers to our connectedness to one another in the most fundamental way. We are one. And here's the graphic that I have chosen for that. So in this day and age of social distancing, we should be physically separated by 6 feet, but at this fundamental plane of reality, we are still connected despite our physical separation. Our connectedness is the underlying reality. Division, separation, those are the surface level illusions. It is only when we cannot see through the illusion, that's why we feel compelled to fight one another. Like, I'm gonna get what's mine, because what's mine is not the same as what's yours. So I gotta get more for me, so there's gonna be less for you. Too bad, haha. So conflicts come from the illusion of division, separation. The underlying reality, the oneness that we're talking about here, it's the oneness of how we connect to one another. When we understand that, then we also understand when we are attacking someone else, we think we are just doing that, doing damage to another person. In fact, we hurt ourselves one way or another. Okay, so a little bit more. This is the third and the most important aspect of it. We will get into this a little bit, and we need to talk about this a lot more next time. But I want to introduce this topic. So lastly, the oneness of the Tao can be seen as the one true path, synonymous with the Tao, meaning this is the most optimal path, the best path for you in this lifetime. So how do we see this? How do we visualize this? Well, we know that we all face many choices in life. Certainly true in my life. I'm willing to bet that it's true in your life as well. Sometimes we can sense that one of the many choices will be the best choice. Question, which one? Which one is the best choice? It is as if we're presented at many junctures with multiple doors. You can only open up a door and go through it, but which door should you pick? So the one true path would map to the best door that you should open up and walk through. You can also think of it as a combination that unlocks. So we know that there are many possible combinations, but only one combination will unlock. So the best path in life is similar to that, because one path out of many will turn out to be the most optimal for you. So that's a great reason for us to study Tao teachings, because Tao teachings is what will help us identify the best path. So, what have we learned so far? We have seen the oneness of the Tao manifesting as a universe itself. Universe, one song, one verse. Our song. We have also seen the oneness of the Tao in the underlying interconnectedness of all humanity. You're connected to me, I'm connected to you, we are one. Then, at yet another level, the third level, I think the most important one, the oneness of the Tao is the one true path. We're going to need to do a lot of work on identifying the best path for you, whether that's even possible. And I will tell you that it is. Next time, I will tell you all about that. I will talk to you about the best way of doing that from the Tao perspective. I will provide some examples of how you can do it for yourself. And keep in mind, you have to do it for yourself. This whole thing of finding the best path in life, it's completely up to you. No one can do it for you. For now, again, time flies. We're having a good time, but we're getting close to 12 o'clock. So we have to bring everything to an end with the summary for today. For the summary, I want to make sure that we summarize and reiterate 得一, which means attain oneness. So once again, you're going to see that same table. The same table covering world, you, oneness. And remember, the way to use this table is to say, well, in the Tao Te Ching, which is the left-hand column, when heaven attains oneness, there's clarity. When your mind attains oneness, you gain clarity. When earth attains oneness, there's tranquility. When your heart attains oneness, you receive tranquility as well. When the gods attain oneness, they have the power of divinity. When your spiritual practice has oneness, you have the power of divinity. Okay? Valley, same way. When valley attains oneness, there's abundance in the valley. When the wealth aspect of your life attains oneness, you enjoy abundance in your life. Living things, when they attain oneness, they have life. When you attain oneness, your physicality enjoys health. The rulers attaining oneness can be an example, can serve as an example for the world. When you attain oneness, your interactions with family, friends, co-workers will have you becoming an example for others to follow. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Let us travel safely. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.